Hello and welcome to CBC Arts Exhibitionists, the show that travels from coast to coast to coast to give you an inside peek into the innovative and imaginative world of Canadian art. I'm your host, Amanda Paris. It's that time of year when the Christmas tree goes up, the paroles are illuminated, and families embarrass themselves playing charades. This is our final episode of the year, our final episode of the decade, so we are celebrating the holiday season Canadian art style. Today, we'll meet the sisters building a small community of magical fairy houses. We'll travel to Sweden for a quick stay in an Icehotel inspired by a cat. We run down some of our favorite art moments alphabetically, and you'll find out why Jim Carrey inspired this Canadian musician to live his most authentic life. I hope you've got your hot cocoa ready, because this is CBC Arts Exhibitionists.
Whimsical things are always beautiful. They're positive things. They're not negative things. I've been an active artist for about 60 years. I always have to have a project. If it's maintaining a home or maintaining a garden or painting, doing fairy houses, it's an outlet. I'd say it's about 2 years ago. I was going through the channels and I noticed there was a cartoon, and the backdrop for the cartoon was this wonderful little village. And I thought it would be fun to create that in my garden. The reason I went for pottery is that my sister is a very accomplished potter.
Now square your pieces up right away.
Yeah. So that would be after you've pushed everything together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I was a professional potter. My studio was called Ash Creek Pottery, and it was open to the public for 36 years.
We have different skill levels because of the time that we've spent in the medium that we are familiar with, and that the other one has something to learn from each other. So I couldn't have done it without her.
What she wanted to do was beyond a beginner skill level. I was teaching her how to handle the clay, coming up with ways of reimagining the materials that I normally work with in order to make them look like building materials.
Some of them look like they're thatched roofs, houses that were put together with straw and then they put clay on the outside. Each one is unique because I was experimenting. The designs evolved as I felt I became better at putting them together.
Knowing Edna as I do, I knew it wouldn't stop at one or two.
Once I started, it was like eating peanuts. You just can't stop. One leads to another, and then another leads to 30, and I haven't finished. When I see children's faces light up, one of the things I think about is how it would have made me feel as a child. I didn't have a pleasant childhood, so I sometimes think that doing things like fairy houses is reminiscent of not having a pleasant childhood. And I must say, when I get up in the morning and I look outside and I wander around the garden, it makes me happy. The fantasies of life. the unexpected. Maybe there are fairies out there. We don't know for sure.
The holiday season is incomplete if it doesn't come with a little music. So we decided to visit a choir of artists who meet each week practicing rearranged pop songs that they say explore themes of madness and hope. The members of this choir are all living with mental health and/or addiction issues. So we went to meet some of them and find out how music has provided a space for healing. Come meet the Bruised Years Choir.
I've been in the choir for about 4, maybe 5 years.
Bruised Years Choir, yeah.
I was going to join a church choir, but they said I needed more practice, but here they take all abilities.
I just joined just for, as an artist, I was isolated, I was in recovery. I wanted something to do to reinvigorate my voice to get back into my body. And just to, really just connect with people who are getting together and singing and letting go of their troubles,
1, 2, 3, 4. And again. Huge idea just hit you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rock and roll. My name is Jim Lefrançois, and here at Workman Arts, I'm the choir director. Everyone in the Bruised Years Choir is dealing with their own mental health and/or addiction issue. I've gone through my own kind of mental health and addiction issues, and during my last, what I call life crash, I went into my stay at CAMH knowing that the only thing I knew I was going to do post 21 days stay with the mood and anxiety unit was the choir.
I've always known that I have mental health issues, and I've never had a problem being open about it because I honestly believe that if we actually address these things, then we can be healthy with them. I signed up for the choir because, ultimately singing is the way my soul breathes. It's something that's been part of my life my whole life. It's about coming together and bringing ourselves out of isolation and enjoying the music together and experiencing the healing that singing provides.
Most people hate Mondays because oh God, but when you have something to look forward to, like singing, it sets the tone of your entire week. It's something beautiful. Philippines is a very musical country, and especially back home, my family is a very musical family. And when I learned how to play the guitar, I was the accompanist. God's beauty. My father wanted me to be an accountant, but I like to take up music. So what I did when I was in high school, in the middle of the night, I would be writing songs. I think I already had anxiety then, and that had been my solace.
One thing that I really struggle with, especially now that my son is grown and out on his own and stuff, is like having some reason to be here. And I know that just coming here, I'm sharing with people that find my company valuable.
People who live with mental health and/or addiction issues, partly because of the shame that we feel about it, tend to isolate. It really helps. It really helps. And I find in the summer when we don't have choir, and don't have that positive punctuation to start the week, I miss it, and I miss these people. I mean, this is my favorite gig I've ever done, and it saved my life. I mean, these choir members have saved my life.
So when you come here, you get a good start for the week.
It's uplifting. It raises people's spirits.
They did a study and they had a look at various sort of group activities, and they found of all the activities they studied, that singing in a choir held the most health benefits. And they actually find that your hearts will beat together. And I think that's quite beautiful and quite moving.
That's why art, do something to the heart, do something to the spirit, do something to the soul, and the body responds.
I feel less like I'm broken here because I'm with people who all share the same struggles.
Coming up, we traveled across land and sea to bring you one of the coldest stories of the year.
I think it has more the personality of our cat and more the personality of this graphic that I started out with. Better, but I feel a little bit like it's, again, kind of just agreeing but not seeing. I mean, it all sounds good, but I don't know until I see it if it feels right or not. So the inspiration behind our room, the Tao of Cat, is our cat. She is a 7-year-old rescue cat that we got as a kitten. And just in observing the way that she behaves and imagining what it is that she thinks, it's about the ways of the cat. I think it's more graphic. It becomes more graphic and more like the style of the illustration than it is trying to be a serious sculpture. And I think it has more the personality of our cat and more the personality of this graphic that I started out with. The final element that we're missing in the room, and that completes the whole thing and ties everything together. Because without the frozen surface of the pond, we just have a cat looking at a fish. Once the paw prints go up, then the story is kind of completed. Working kind of as a sculptor, which this is our first time doing this, you can't control every detail of it. It just evolves, and maybe it changes into a direction that you weren't really planning to have at the beginning. The material is teaching me what to do a bit. So we have been working together for longer than we have been a couple. Having different ways of seeing, that's the thing that makes it interesting, because if you both think too similarly, then you don't really push each other and you don't really develop.
Somebody told me once, 1 + 1 has to be 2. For us, that's really how it is. We are stronger together.
But it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes we're really butting heads and going, no, this is totally... No, I don't agree at all, but okay, fine. If that's what you want to do, then... Okay, but you know, there's not enough space for the circle now. That's what I was saying.
No, I know. The question is like letting go now and saying, okay, that's it.
Why do I let go right at the last final push? That's like running to the finish line and then tripping at the last minute and not crossing over it.
Wait, after lunch we meet here again. Let's fix it, and then I will take the pictures.
That room is incredibly impressive, but I have to be honest, you couldn't pay me enough to stay in an Icehotel. If that made you feel cold, I've got something that'll warm you up. To celebrate the last few years at CBC Arts and the end of the decade, we created a look back at some of the artists we've covered through a little something we call the alphabet of art.
Is the audience gonna appreciate it? I don't know and I don't care. I'm not interested in art for the sake of art.
I want them to follow me. I want them to love drag.
Watching that mastered is so powerful.
If I want to be really sexual, I shouldn't be limited by what other people expect of me.
I like the idea of just blowing the concept of image and perception.
Coming up, we find out why this Canadian musician stands the legendary Jim Carrey. You may know Lucas Silveira as the mind and voice of the rock band The Clicks. He's also the first openly transgender man to sign with a major record label. We invited Lucas to look back at the 2010s and talk about a Canadian artist, someone that he's been a super fan of and who has inspired his journey. The name, he says, may bring a smile to your face.
There's Fire Marshal Bill, so that was the, let me tell you something. There's one. The Canadian artist that I have stand in the last decade is Jim Carrey. For anyone who doesn't know who Jim Carrey is, you have been living under a rock. He's been around since, the early 90s, and I think I started watching him on television with a show called In Living Color. I think in the last few years, what's drawn me into him the most was after watching the documentary Jim and Andy, where he talked about his process of reenacting the life of Andy Kaufman and sort of how he got lost in that character.
When I heard I had the part, I was looking at the ocean, and that's the moment when Andy came back to make his movie.
Hello.
Universal didn't want the footage we took behind the scenes to surface so that people wouldn't think I was an asshole.
The sort of spiritual fallout of that, or the personal sort of awareness that he gained from that, to me was really, really insightful to sort of my own spiritual journey. The first time I watched Jim and Andy was about 2 years ago, and I was going through sort of a personal shift in myself. There was something in the movie that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I think he said something along the lines of, I had everything I wanted and I was so unhappy. And it helped him to realize that all of those things are not what makes you happy. And I remembered having this moment myself in my music career where I was on stage at Radio City Music Hall and I looked out into the audience and I just remember thinking, I'm miserable. Why am I so unhappy right now? And it was in that moment that I realized that everything I'd been doing was for this, kind of illusion, this world that I was participating in was not a world I really wanted to be in. I wanted to be an artist, but I didn't want to do that. It's been really beautiful to see somebody who was so invested in a career of being this huge celebrity and huge star have this awakening and move towards something that felt more true to him. I think that Jim Carrey has evolved into a beautiful human being, and I know that there are a lot of people out there who think that he's kind of, gone into a level of, not being very grounded, but I think he's the most grounded he's ever been. So Jim, thank you for being yourself, for being open and always being true to your art. You are truly appreciated.
That was part of our larger project, the 2010s, the decade Canadian artists stopped saying sorry. You can spend some quality holiday hours checking it out on our site. If you have an artist that you think will be shaping the next 10 years of Canadian art, send me a message on social media. Our handle is @CBC Arts. See you next decade with even more artists from the North Pole to Southampton. Before I go, we brought the Bruised Years Choir to our CBC studios. It was the first time they ever recorded as a group in a professional studio and listened to an engineer mix their music. They're gonna finish the episode with one of their songs. Have a safe and happy holidays. Peace.
You're not alone. Take 5. Slip.
When you doubt yourself, when you hurt yourself, when there's no one else to blame, you took a number on your own thunder, you dove deep and stayed under the sea. Don't know what you're waiting for, there ain't no treasure coming to your door.